Hey, welcome back to Noggin Notes. My name is Jake Wiskerson. I'm the host, and this episode involves my interview with Zach Kumler, who is advocating quite heavily for military veterans, he being one himself, and he's helping connect veterans with jobs and employers who need employees with veterans who need those jobs. He also wears a couple of different hats, and I definitely mentioned that in the podcast, and he explains that. But one of the really cool endeavors that he does is he helps veterans with their mental wellness following their separation from the military. And he does that in a variety of ways, not the least of which is through his organization called Woobies United. That's WOOBIES, united.com. And you can check them out. The podcast, as usual, is sponsored by Audible. If you have not yet discovered audiobooks or audio content, you really should. Go to audibletrial.com/nogginnotes for a free 30-day trial. And in that 30-day trial, you get a free audiobook to download. And you get to keep it even if you quit your trial. Audibletrial.com/nogginnotes. Get your free 30-day trial. And I don't think you'll quit. I think like most people, you'll end up sticking around because their audio selection is really unmatched. audibletrial.com/nogginnotes. And also, as always, we're sponsored by Zephyr Wellness, which is my company that I co-own in Northern Nevada. We do outpatient mental health counseling, and you can find out more at zephyrwellness.org, as well as on our YouTube, Instagram, and Facebook channels. That's it for me. Listen to my interview now with Zach. Enjoy. Well, thanks again, listening audience, for coming back and downloading our content. I like to thank our listening audience as often as I can because it's always humbling that people would choose to spend their time listening to what I have to say. This week we have with us Zach Kumler, who is, he wears a lot of hats too, kind of like I do. But I'm going to let you introduce yourself.
Sure.
Go ahead.
I'm Zach Kumler. I
already said that.
I am the CEO of Alpha Roster, which is a veteran recruiting and staffing agency. We focus on veterans, first responders, and their families, and getting them back to work with meaningful employers. I am also a co-founder of a nonprofit called Woobies United, at Woobies United on Instagram. We focus on taking veterans out and giving them meaningful experiences, whether it be riding a horse for 15, 20 miles pushing cattle, or hunting an elk in Idaho, or deer, or anything like that. We focus on mainly hunting and hiking and getting folks out into the outdoors to deal with mental health.
And that concludes our podcast.
The end.
Zach and I go back several years. We played baseball together, and we had not seen each other for quite some time. And then you reached out and wanted to connect over this mental health topic because you do a lot of work with veterans, and I work in the mental health realm. And so we met for happy hour tacos at Great Basin Brewing Company. And
that's the first time we've seen each other in a couple of years, right?
Yeah, almost like 4 or 5 years. But I was stoked, and I had no idea that you had been doing all the stuff that you do in your world. And I want you to do a quick rundown of, because you've like been to D.C., you talked to our elected officials on a federal level, you work with a lot of important people, and I think it's important to paint this picture because for the listening audience, what I try to do with this podcast is make it encouraging and inspiring. We obviously touch on serious topics, but what we want to do is let people know that average random folks, you're from Fernley, Nevada, it's like a town of 25,000 people and growing, but you went into the military, you did your thing, you came back out, and you're like lighting the world on fire in so many ways. And I think there's nothing special about us, right? We just work really hard, and we have big dreams, and we don't take no for an answer.
Yeah.
So tell your story, if you will, and then I want to get into some of the endeavors.
First and foremost, I'm a 90s kid, born in 88. Most of the cartoons I watched were, heroes versus villains, Ninja Turtles, Street Sharks. I love that stuff. So when I graduated high school, I had a gleam in my eye, and I was ready to help people. I've always been that person. I've always wanted to help people. No matter what the issue, I just wanted to be there to lend a hand. I was going to go play college ball, ended up not playing college ball, and had to figure out a way to pay for my education. So I ended up joining the United States military, the Army. I was stationed out in Hawaii, deployed to Iraq, fought bad guys, did the whole, combat arms thing, and loved it. I loved the Army a lot, but it taught me a lot as well about human beings and, being in another country where you are trying to defend someone else's freedom is a huge thing, but you learn a lot about humans as a whole and yourself. And I thought I learned a lot of good lessons from that. When I transitioned from the military, I started working for big corporations and really focusing on how do I get my brothers and sisters in arms into these good jobs. So I built a company around that. Like a lot of veterans get out and they have no idea where to go, how to leverage their skills. So I built a company around that. And then I was out on a turkey hunt with a couple of my buddies. It's been a while. I just needed some friends in my life. I was pretty much isolated. I had a roommate that we'd hang out with. But we went on this turkey hunt and it brought everyone together. Everyone was kind of in different places in their life. We completely got skunked, didn't shoot a single turkey. We stalked turkeys all day long, walked a lot, put some hard work in. But at the end of the day, nothing happened. But we spent 4 days in the woods trying and learning about other people's experiences, our friends even that we haven't seen in years. And to be able to connect on a different level, started talking about family, where we wanted to go. That meant something to me. And I said, what if we can replicate this on a larger scale for more veterans to deal with PTSD and stress and anxiety and to actually have a conversation around it? Because my generation, you get back from war, you don't talk about what happened. You're just shut off from that. It's kind of, everyone says, go see mental health, but you don't go see mental health. And I started to, and it opened me up to thinking, wow, it's amazing that I can go talk to someone, and just having the anonymity between myself and the other person I was talking with made it a lot easier and more comfortable for me to say, hey, these are the crazy things that happened to me. Does this make me a bad person? Does this,
Right.
and that helped me define who I was and the direction I was going to go. And then we ended up leading into Woobie's United. And I've met so many people through this journey already that have seen their, brothers and sisters in arms kill themselves, take their lives. And this year I've lost 2. And it wasn't, everyone's aware of it. You see the 22 a day, 22 push-ups for suicide, all that stuff. But we've gotten to the point where how do we prevent this thing? Like it's preventable, but how do we do that? And that has come in the form of me pulling in other veterans and saying, hey, let's sit down and do something different and get out into the world.
You had your own struggles coming back. You referenced it just now when you said, I went in and talked to somebody about it. I want you to tell that story because you and I were on your podcast just a little bit ago, and I think it's refreshing to hear somebody open up and be vulnerable and say, yeah, I was struggling and I got help, and now I'm not struggling anymore. And we always like to hear those stories. But I also wanted to ask, I think about like my grandfather fought in World War II. And he never talked about it. And lots of people don't kill themselves because of their psychological struggles, but a lot of people do struggle. And I'm trying to wrap my head around the generational differences between and among, the World War I, World War II, Korea, Vietnam, OIF, OEF stuff. How is it that this is just a new thing too? Like it seems new to these generations, the last 20 years or so. We're like, go get yourself some counseling, as opposed to before it was like, And I don't know if it's worse now, quote unquote, or if it's just different, or maybe we're more aware. So speak a little bit to that, as well as like tell your own story if you would.
Yeah, sure. And I want to start by saying I'm only open to talking about it now. It took a lot. It took a lot for me to open up about it and talk about my struggle with antidepressants, pills that I was given through the military, a lot of that stuff. And I found a need to talk about it because no one was. When I was deployed in Iraq, we had our bumps and bruises, getting blown up, houseborne IEDs, pulling, bodies on bodies out of homes where they're just shredded into pieces. That was tough. But I had prepared myself for that. I had prepared myself going into that deployment, and I don't think a lot of people do. And I just
how so?
When I went, everyone watched the war movies. When you're at MEPS joining the military, you're watching Black Hawk Down. So you're like imagining what it could be and some of the possible scenarios. And I'm one of those guys, like, when I'm at home, I'm thinking
you practiced in advance in your head.
Exactly. Yeah. I go and act it out in my head. How would I deal with the situation? Everyone's done it as a kid. Like if a burglar broke in, you go to the Home Alone scenario, right? You're like, I'm going to put some marbles on the floor and some jacks and blah, blah, blah.
Drop a paint can on them.
And for me, that's how I deal with a lot of things. That's how I get ahead of how I'm going to feel about a lot of things. So I took that and started replaying it through my mind. Even when I got there, it was completely different than I thought it was going to be. I thought we were going just fighting these bad guys in this bad country where everyone sucks. The people are awful. They weren't. The people there were just like us. They want to, go to their job or make their wage if they're working, or tend to their crops and stuff like that, and stay out of it. They wanted to. They, I think all of us, we like to drink beer or have a good time, see our family, that community feel. And I think by going over there, I ended up having. I'd say after month 2, I kind of had to shut those emotions down, kind of get rid of fear and panic and stuff like that. Because if you have that inside of you, it doesn't provide you any good. That's how people get killed.
Hold on a second, because that's really interesting to me. So I'm an emotional functioning guy, and I teach that emotions are adaptive to the world around you. So fear is one of those that prepares you for a threat or a danger, right? Why would you want to shut that off if all you're facing is threats and danger?
Yeah. So for fear, for me, like threats and dangers are one thing. I think that's where that military preparedness comes from. Talking frontal lobe, like you're just jumping right into how you would regularly react to something. And my reactions are good. That's trained on. That's something that I have developed a muscle memory for. But fear, when you get blown up, and we call it in the military the butthole pucker factor, like, how bad was it?
I get that when a highway patrolman is behind me on the highway.
That's exactly it. When you're in Iraq driving over each crack or just driving through a pile of trash, it's scary because any one of those could be an IED, could detonate and kill you.
Improvised explosive device. We try to explain our acronyms on this podcast.
Absolutely, yeah. So I found that fear for me would constantly get me like in a panic mode instead of being calm, because when you're calm, you're able to react to things. You don't, shoot innocent civilians. You don't, frag out someone, for no reason.
You're not on edge.
Yeah. So you have to dial that in and have a more smooth and rounded out way to deal with things. And fear just wasn't one of those things. It keeps you on alert. And I think a lot of that alertness comes from our training. So you still had that, but you were able to check things to the side.
Okay, that makes sense. And then how you explained before, so I'm not going to be completely ignorant, but how does that not translate when you're not in combat anymore, when you come home?
It's tough. So I feel like when I got out of the military, the hardest thing that I was coping with at the time was I'm not going to do anything cool again.
What's that mean?
That adrenaline rush, from driving 80 miles an hour on a road in Iraq, and then, owning the road because that's how you save your life. And then you get back here, and probably the most adrenaline rush I'll feel is, going and shooting sometimes, or, going and doing a crazy hike, or you turn into an adrenaline junkie almost. And, I'm not hang gliding or jumping out of airplanes with a parachute or anything like that, but
a lot of people do that though.
Yeah. And I feel like that rush, you lose that. And in order to find that rush or that meaning in my life, I started a new company that focused on veterans that we have a very similar culture with. And then with Woobies, shooting and riding horses, being in control of a live animal, or having somewhat control over a live animal while pushing cattle was one of the craziest things I had ever done. You're riding hard, and you get that cowboy phase. You're doing something cool and hard and tough, and that's what's written on my heart and my values. I want to be the John Wayne.
That's cool. Yeah, I've heard that before, and I'm pausing here to collect my words, because I think it's been so long since I've heard somebody refer to adrenaline junkie or chasing that adrenaline rush. It's been several years, and it was a teenager that I worked with who came from an abusive home, And so when he was always on guard, it's very much PTSD when you're raised in chaos and violence, right? So you don't, those listening, you don't have to be in combat to get PTSD. You just have to have your life threatened or someone else's around you. And